It was a Tuesday night when Lena sat me down at the kitchen table. I'd just come back from a job in Missoula, freelance carpentry work, custom shelving for a retired couple. My hands were still rough with sawdust, boots tracking in the last of the snowmelt. She had that look in her eyes, calm on the surface, storm underneath. "I went to the doctor," she said quietly, fingers wrapped tight around a mug of tea she hadn't touched. "They found something." I didn't speak. I'd learned over the years that Lena didn't like being interrupted mid-delivery. She needed the silence to push words through. "Breast cancer," she said finally. "Aggressive, but treatable." It landed like a dull hammer. Not a crack, not a break, just pressure. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. She reached across the table and took my hand, as if I was the one who needed comforting. "They caught it early enough. There's a plan. I'm starting chemo next week." "Chemo," I repeated, the word thick in my mouth. "Do you want me to come with you? I can—" "No," she said quickly. "James, no. I need to do this on my terms." Her eyes didn't flinch, but something behind them pulled back. "You have work. You have enough on your shoulders. I don't want you sitting in waiting rooms worrying about me. Just support me from here. That's all I ask." I hesitated. It felt wrong, but she looked so sure, so composed, like she'd already fought this battle in her head and knew how she wanted it to go. "Okay," I said. "Whatever you need." I held her that night, tighter than I had in months. She cried a little into my shoulder, and I didn't ask why. I assumed it was fear. I assumed a lot of things. Over the next few days, she started prepping, reading articles, changing her diet, clearing shelves in the bathroom for new medications. I watched from the doorway, unsure of how to help. She didn't want sympathy. She wanted space. So I gave it to her. What else was I supposed to do? The first time Lena brought up money, it was casual, like she was asking if we had enough milk. We were standing in the kitchen, her running a hand along the counter I'd refinished the year before. "I checked with the insurance," she said, flipping through a stack of papers. "They won't cover everything, especially not the more aggressive treatment options." I looked up from my coffee. "How much are we talking?" She paused, like she hated even saying it out loud. 30, maybe 40,000. Not all at once, but over time. We'll figure it out." That made it easier to swallow. I opened our joint account the next morning. We'd been saving for years, maybe for a bigger house, maybe for someday. It didn't matter now. If Lena was fighting for her life, there was no number I wouldn't hand over. Over the next few weeks, I watched our balance shrink. Lena said the treatments were rough, that she was exhausted afterward. She'd come home pale, quiet, sometimes retreating to the guest room without a word. When I asked how it was going, she'd give me soft answers. Tiring. Complicated. "Let's not talk about it tonight." I didn't press. She didn't want pity. She wanted control. When she said we might need to look into a personal loan, I didn't even blink. I drove down to the credit union and signed the forms that afternoon. We stopped going out, stopped inviting friends over. The world narrowed to just the two of us, moving around each other like furniture. Sometimes I caught her staring out the window, eyes glassy, lips pressed tight. I figured it was fear again, or maybe anger, the kind that creeps in when your body turns against you. I worked longer hours, picked up extra jobs, anything to keep us afloat, anything to keep her comfortable. She stopped wearing her wedding ring. I asked her about it once. She said her fingers were swelling from the treatments. I believed her. Because that's what you do when someone you love is hurting. You believe them. Even when the math doesn't quite add up. Even when part of you wonders what you're really fighting against. It was a Thursday morning in April when I found the house too quiet. I'd gotten up early thinking maybe I'd make Lena breakfast. Eggs, toast, coffee, just the way she liked it. But the bed beside me was cold. Guest room too. Empty. I called her name once, then louder. No answer. Closet half empty. Her suitcase gone. The drawer where she kept her medications. Wiped clean. Her phone was off. Not dead. Off. That's when I saw the note. Plain white paper folded in half, resting on the kitchen counter like she'd just stepped out for groceries. Her handwriting, neat and small, like always. I need time to think. Don't look for me. That was it. No love, Lena. No explanation. Just a disappearing act, mid-scene. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at that note while the coffee maker gurgled behind me. It sounded too cheerful for the moment. I unplugged it. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually, I called her sister Kara, asked if Lena had come by. She hadn't. I tried her friends, the dental office, even the hospital she claimed to visit every week. No one had seen her. By noon, I was at the police station filing a missing person report. The officer at the desk asked if she had a history of mental illness, if she was suicidal, if we'd argued recently. No, I said. She has cancer. She's going through treatment. He raised an eyebrow. And she left on her own? I showed him the note. He read it, then shrugged like that answered everything. She's an adult, he said. She can leave if she wants. I walked out into the parking lot and stood there, staring at nothing. I felt like I'd been emptied out from the inside, drained and discarded like a used syringe. No anger yet, just the echo of her absence. That night I slept on the couch, not because I had to, but because the bed felt too big, too dishonest. She'd said not to look for her. But that wasn't going to happen. Not after everything. Not like this. It was a week later when I got the message. A friend of mine, Brett, sent me a link and 5 words. You need to see this now. It was a social media post, private account, but someone had screenshotted it. A beach in Tulum, blue water, white sand, 2 drinks sweating on a table, and Lena. She was smiling in a sun hat and sunglasses, arm linked with a man I hadn't seen in over a year, Joel Patterson, the guy she used to work with before he left town under vague circumstances, dental representative. Too many stories about him floating around back then. Slick talker, quick hands, always too close when he stood near Lena at office parties. I stared at the photo like it might rearrange itself into something else if I looked hard enough. But there was no mistake. She looked happy, healthy. Not a trace of chemo fatigue. Her hair was full, skin tanned. No scarf, no signs of treatment. My phone slid out of my hand and hit the floor. Brett called a minute later. I wasn't sure, he said, voice low. Didn't want to make it worse, but she's been posting under a different name. Lee Palmer. Joel shows up in a lot of the pictures. How long? I asked. Couple months at least. Might be longer. You okay? But, I said. Yeah. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and started searching. Found more photos, pinned locations, restaurants, hotels, yacht rides, Joel and Lena or Lee, smiling like they just won the lottery. I recognized my sunglasses in one picture, my luggage in another, our money in every backdrop. The lies stacked themselves like bricks. No chemo, no treatments, just an exit plan disguised as tragedy. And I'd paid for the whole thing. The next morning, I called the detective on her missing person case, told him to cancel the report, said she wasn't missing, just somewhere she didn't belong. Then I sat at the kitchen table with that same crumpled note in front of me and wrote a new one on the back. Time to think, huh? I've been doing that too. She disappeared without warning. Now I was going to make sure she couldn't disappear from what came next. The thing that finally pushed me over was the silence. Not the kind that settles in a room after someone leaves, but the kind that lingers in unanswered questions, dead phone lines, missing paperwork, a sickness with no trail behind it. I called the number Lena had written on the fridge months ago, her oncologist, Dr. Harrow, private practice. The receptionist answered politely until I gave Lena's name. No patient by that name, she said after a brief pause. Are you sure she was seen here? I was holding the note she'd left with the appointment dates. She listed your clinic as her provider. I'm sorry, sir. There's no record of a Lena Briggs or Lena Patterson. I thanked her and hung up. Next was the insurance. I called the health provider we'd had for 6 years. The woman on the line sounded like she'd just come back from lunch, relaxed, unbothered. I gave her our policy number, Lena's details, the timeline. Let me check. Okay. I see no recent claims filed, nothing cancer-related. Last claim was from 8 months ago, an annual physical. Everything looked normal. Are you sure? I asked. Completely. I sat very still after that. Then I reached for my notebook. I'd been jotting things down over the weeks, odd comments, gaps in Lena's stories, the bills that never came. None of it made sense until now. There was no chemo, no cancer, no I'm doing this for us struggle behind the curtain. Just a lie dressed up in sympathy. And I'd bought it, funded it, sacrificed for it. I stood up, walked to the bathroom, and looked at myself in the mirror. My face was thinner than I remembered, eyes tired, but now something sharper behind them, the kind of focus that doesn't flinch anymore. She hadn't just left. She'd engineered an exit, and I was going to find out exactly how. It started with a spreadsheet. I pulled up every statement from the last year, checking, savings, the credit card we only used for emergencies. I started marking anything unusual. There were dozens. Recurring ATM withdrawals from out-of-the-way gas stations. Small charges to online retailers I didn't recognize. Transfers from our joint account to one I hadn't opened. By noon, I had a trail of breadcrumbs. By dinner time, I had a map. I called Thomas Kerr, a private investigator I'd met once at a vet's benefit. Former Army, quiet, efficient, no small talk. Need to find someone, I told him. She's traveling with a man, using a false name. He didn't ask questions, just said, "Send me everything you have." I emailed the spreadsheet, photos, and Lena's last known aliases. 24 hours later, he called back. They've been in Colombia, Tulum before that. Checked into a resort in Cartagena last week under Lee Palmer and Joseph Marin. Fake IDs, but well made. Same pattern I've seen before. Rent, vanish, resurface 2 cities later. How long have they been doing this? At least 4 months together, maybe longer. He's done this before. She's either part of it or got pulled in. She's part of it, I said. There was no more doubt. Thomas sent screenshots, passport scans, hotel booking records, even a photo from a concierge's phone. Lena was laughing. Wearing a dress I'd bought her 2 Christmases ago, holding a cocktail in the same hand that used to wear my ring. The cocktail was garnished with a smile. The kind of smile you only give when you think no one's watching. I sent Thomas one last message. Keep tracking them. I want to know everything. Where they sleep, where they spend, who they talk to. He replied with one word, understood. Later that night, I stared at the man in the mirror again. Same eyes, same tired lines. But now I saw something else. Not revenge. Not yet. Just clarity. The kind that comes when the lie is over and the real story begins. The office smelled like stale coffee and old leather. Walls lined with certificates and bookcases full of binders that looked too heavy to open. The kind of place where lives are dissected in slow, precise increments. Across from me sat Clara Winslow, civil attorney, recommended by Thomas the PI, former JAG, straight shooter. No patience for dramatics. After I laid everything out, fake cancer, forged documents, vanishing funds, stolen identity, she leaned back in her chair and tapped her pen once on the desk. Here's the short version, she said. Fraud within a marriage is hard to prosecute. There's a legal gray zone where marital assets are concerned, but she opened a folder and flipped through my files. With forged signatures, falsified medical claims, and interstate financial transfers, we may be looking at something actionable, especially if there's conspiracy involved. What about criminal charges? That depends. If we can tie her to a pattern, connect her knowingly to the boyfriend's scams, we're in felony territory. If not, it might stay civil. But even then, you can freeze assets, block further transfers, and file suit. I exhaled slowly. So she might get away with it. She might, Clara said. But if we're smart, we make that very, very difficult. We spent the next hour cataloging everything. Bank statements, messages, screenshots, timestamps. Clara made notes like a surgeon marking where to cut. Do not contact her, she warned. Do not tip your hand. We want her relaxed, confident. That's when people get sloppy. As I left, she handed me a checklist. 32 items. Dates, institutions, documents to pull. A legal scavenger hunt. You're in a war now, she said plainly. Don't bring emotions to a gunfight. I nodded. I wasn't angry anymore. I was preparing. Kara answered on the second ring. Lena's older sister, 2 years estranged. Last I'd heard, she lived in Idaho, ran a dog rescue, and had stopped speaking to Lena after a blowout at their mother's funeral. James? She asked, surprised. I need to talk to you. It's about your sister. There was a pause. What's she done? We met at a diner off the interstate, neutral ground. I brought a manila folder with photos and documents, let her flip through in silence. She faked cancer? Kara said finally. Jesus Christ. I nodded. Took our savings, left with a man she was seeing on the side. They're traveling under fake names. Kara sat back, eyes unreadable. I believe you. I waited. She did the same thing to me, she said. Not this big, but same playbook. Lied about medical bills. Said she needed help with rent. I loaned her $5,000. Found out later she used it to fly to Vegas with some guy she met online. Why didn't you tell anyone? Because no one listens when Lena's the victim, she said. She's always been the smart one, the one with charm. But even when we were kids, she lied, stole, manipulated. She once convinced my parents I'd pushed her down the stairs. I was grounded for a month. I let that sit. You ever wonder how someone becomes like this? I asked. No, she said flatly. She's not broken. She just likes control. Kara gave me old photos, texts, even a few voicemails from Lena that bordered on threatening. More weight for the case, more proof of pattern. She'll turn on him too, Kara said. She always does. I left the diner feeling heavier, but sharper. The woman I married was a mask, and behind it was someone who'd been wearing other faces long before I ever showed up. I'd spent years building a life with Lena. Turns out I was just scaffolding, a propriedad. But now I was pulling the whole structure down, beam by beam, and I wasn't stopping until I hit bedrock. It was the kind of screw-up that only happens when people get too comfortable, when they think they've won. Joel posted a photo on his private account. Just a cocktail glass on a marble counter, half-melted ice catching the light. Harmless at first glance. A lifestyle flex. Hashtag work hard, play hard. But Thomas, the PI, was watching. He called me at 6:12 a.m. You sitting down? Go ahead. Joel posted a pic last night. Didn't scrub the metadata. GPS tag puts him in Cartagena, luxury villa, north end of the city. Name checks out, Casa Mirador Azul, rented under one of their aliases. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. Just let it sink in. I've already contacted my liaison in Bogota, he added. They've looped in U.S. consular services. This could be our chance to confront them, legally and directly. You in? I didn't hesitate. Yes. I booked a flight that afternoon. Clara, my attorney, arranged for a legal liaison to meet me in Cartagena, someone who'd work with local officials and keep us within the bounds of international law. On the plane, I stared out the window, watching clouds drift beneath the wing like smoke trails. Somewhere down there, Lena was sipping drinks and wearing someone else's name, thinking she'd disappeared. She hadn't. She just stepped into a bigger frame. And I was ready to develop the whole picture. Cartagena looked like paradise. Blue water, terracotta rooftops, the kind of heat that slows your heartbeat. I met Luis, the liaison, outside the villa. Gray suit, quiet voice, a man who didn't waste time. They're inside, he said. Joel left earlier. She's alone. Good, I said. He knocked. A few seconds later, the door opened. Lena stood there in linen pants and a white blouse, sun-kissed, barefoot. For half a second, she looked like the woman I'd married. Then her face dropped. James. She stepped outside, closing the door behind her like she could still protect what was left inside. What are you doing here? She asked, voice brittle. I know everything, the fake cancer, the money, the forged signature. Her lips parted, then pressed together again. She didn't deny it. I didn't want to hurt you, she said finally. I didn't know how else to leave. You left fine, I said. It's what you took. That's the problem. I was drowning, she whispered. Joel helped me breathe. He understood me. Did he understand the VA loan, the account transfers, the crime you built out of sympathy? She didn't answer, just looked past me, out to the water. I did it for both of us, she said. You would have hated me for staying, You hate me now for leaving. There was no winning. No, I said. But there's losing, and you're about to learn what that looks like. Luis stepped forward then, calm and professional. We need to speak with you, Ms. Palmer. Officially. Lena didn't flinch. She just sighed, as if the game was finally up, as if she knew she'd pushed one lie too far. And now, the truth was knocking. The next morning, Colombian authorities made their move. Luis and I waited in an unmarked SUV down the street while plainclothes officers approached the villa. Joel had returned late the night before, laughing, holding a paper bag of street food like it was just another vacation evening. He never saw it coming. I watched through binoculars as two officers stepped inside. A minute later, Joel came out in handcuffs, shirtless, confused, still chewing. Lena followed shortly after, flanked on either side. She wasn't crying, just quiet. The same way she looked when she lied. Calm, controlled, calculating what came next. The officer in the passenger seat radioed something in Spanish. Luis translated without turning his head. Charges confirmed: fraud, identity falsification, financial conspiracy. U.S. is requesting extradition. I handed him the flash drive I'd carried from Montana. It held everything: forged refinance documents, metadata from Joel's post, screenshots of the secret accounts, recordings from the villa's own security cameras that Thomas had tapped into the week before. Will this be enough? I asked. Luis took the drive carefully, like it was something dangerous. It's more than enough. 3 hours later, I was giving an official statement inside the U.S. consulate. Direct, chronological, clean. Just the facts. I'd already lived through the emotion. Now I was laying out the damage like a blueprint of a collapsed bridge. By sunset, Lena and Joel were in federal custody, paperwork already moving to bring them stateside. For the first time in months, I slept without waking up at 3 a.m., wondering if I'd imagined everything. This wasn't closure, but it was accountability. Lena was extradited 2 weeks later under sealed escort. Joel followed 3 days after, already talking to cut a deal. Typical. He pled guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud and identity theft, agreeing to testify against Lena and 2 others in their little operation. Apparently, I wasn't the first husband Joel had helped separate from his money, just the one who pushed back hard enough to break the chain. Lena's trial was slower. She denied knowledge of the fraud at first, claimed she was manipulated, misled, scared, but the evidence was weightier than her words. Signed documents, fake IDs, money trails. Not even her lawyer could spin that clean. The press caught wind within days. Montana man's wife faked cancer, fled with lover in financial fraud scheme. My face wasn't in the headline, but it might as well have been. News vans parked near my street. Friends texted. Acquaintances I hadn't heard from in years wanted to check in. I ignored all of them. I didn't need pity. I needed quiet. There were nights when the shame hit harder than the betrayal. Not because of what she did, but because I let her. Because I believed her when she said she was dying. Because I handed over our savings and never asked for receipts. I kept thinking of that note. Don't look for me. She never expected I would. Never expected I could. And now, everyone knew the truth. The worst part wasn't the headlines. It was knowing that if she'd never left, I might still be refilling her fake prescriptions, still working overtime to fund her escape. People didn't know how close I came to never questioning it, and that thought stayed with me longer than any news cycle ever could. I sold the house 6 weeks after the trial ended. Too many ghosts in the walls. Too much silence in the hallways. I didn't want to sleep in the bed where she used to fake being weak. I moved into a 2-bedroom rental on the outskirts of Missoula. Small kitchen, creaky floors, no yard. But it was mine. No shared deed, no buried lies. Just me, a stack of moving boxes, and the slow process of starting over. Work came next. I'd always handled our finances, budgeting, investment choices, tax prep, so it didn't feel like a stretch when I started offering help to others. It started slow. Word-of-mouth clients, friends of friends, divorced men mostly. Guys who'd been blindsided just like I was, staring at spreadsheets and wondering how they missed the red flags. I didn't offer therapy, I offered clarity. That turned out to be enough. On Tuesdays, I started attending a support group at the VFW hall. No name tags, just a circle of folding chairs and people who knew what it felt like to be betrayed by someone who said, "I love you." The first time I spoke, I kept it brief. Just said her name, where she was now, and what it cost me to get here. They didn't nod or applaud. They just listened. That was enough, too. I got a dog, a mutt from the shelter with one ear that stuck up and one that didn't. Named him Ranger, took him on hikes, let him sleep at the foot of the bed. He didn't ask questions, just followed me like I wasn't broken. There were bad nights, quiet ones where memories hit like an ambush. But they came less often. And when they did, I knew how to let them pass without setting up camp. Some scars don't heal the way you want them to, but they stop bleeding. Eventually. It came on a Tuesday. No return address, just my name written in the same sharp handwriting I used to love seeing on birthday cards and sticky notes stuck to the fridge. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper. James. I've had time to think. A lot of it. I know what I did was unforgivable. I never meant to hurt you. Not really. I was drowning and Joel made me feel seen. It wasn't about money. It was about being alive again. You gave me safety. He gave me escape. I know you won't forgive me, but I need you to know I loved you in my own way. Maybe still do. She didn't sign it, "Love, Lena." She didn't apologize. Just layered excuses dressed up like insight. A manipulative apology. One more attempt to pull a string I'd already cut. I read it once. Didn't reread it. Didn't fold it carefully. I walked outside, held it over the fire pit, and lit the corner with a match. It caught fast. Turned from words to ash in seconds. I didn't look away. Not because I was angry, but because I wasn't. She wanted a reaction, closure on her terms. She wasn't getting either. I stood there until the flame went out, until the last scrap of her letter fluttered away in the breeze. I'd spent enough of my life responding to her. Now, I responded to no one. And that, finally, felt like peace. A year later, I barely recognized the man I used to be. Not because I was harder or colder, though I was both in small, necessary ways, but because I'd stopped defining myself by what had been taken. The business was steady now. Word had gotten around that I helped people pick up the financial pieces others left behind. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't drowning either. I had a rhythm. Mornings with black coffee, afternoons with Ranger at my feet while I worked. Evenings sometimes spent walking trails I used to hike with Lena, though I didn't think of her much anymore. Not with bitterness, just with distance. I was seeing someone new, Claire, teacher, quiet, curious, kind, in a way that didn't need applause. We'd met at the bookstore downtown, reached for the same paperback, laughed, kept talking. I told her my story early, not all of it, just enough to see if she'd flinch. She didn't. No white knight complex. No need to fix me, just a willingness to build something honest, brick by brick. I took things slow, not out of fear, but out of respect, for her and for myself. When you've been burned in the dark, you learn to carry your own light. The media had long since moved on. Joel was serving his time. Lena had disappeared into the system, plea deal, probation, mandatory restitution. I didn't follow her case. I didn't need to. She no longer lived in my head. Just in a chapter I didn't need to reread. I kept the fire pit, though I hadn't burned anything since her letter. That felt like enough ritual for one life. One night in early fall, I sat on the back steps with Claire, a blanket over our shoulders, Ranger asleep nearby. We didn't talk much, just watched the stars appear, one by one, like quiet reassurances that things end, and then they start again. She leaned into me. "Do you ever think about it?" she asked. I knew what she meant. "Sometimes," I said, "not with regret, more like clarity." She nodded, resting her head on my shoulder. "Some betrayals don't break you. They show you exactly who you are. And now, I finally knew." This story was brutal, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.